Dateline Chicago, taking you on an actual flight inside the cockpit of a commercial jetliner.
106 and 128. Thank you. There's 96. Rotate.
How these giant aircraft manage to remain separated from each other as they speed through clouds, overcast, rain, or fog is our story tonight. The story of Victor 84. This is the relatively unknown Chicago Air Route Traffic Control Center at Aurora. Its men and equipment protect thousands of airplanes day and night from any possibility of colliding in midair. Microwave towers at the center receive radar signals relayed by the radar globes sweeping the skies in the Midwest. They track all aircraft in an area 400 by 400 miles. Green Bay to Peoria, Battle Creek to Iowa City. The 160,000 square mile responsibility of Chicago Air Traffic Control. Every day, our American skies, 20,000 flights are guaranteed protective airspace by the Federal Aviation Agency traffic control centers operated all across the country. Our flight heading west from New York has just left Cleveland Control. United Airlines Captain Cody Gates describes the flight ahead.
They handed us off, so to speak, to the Chicago ARTC, which is their control area is in Aurora. They're monitoring us on radar. They can identify us with a little blip that is sent to them through our transponder. We have 64 frequencies so that they may request any particular frequency and we can send a transponder message to them. As we proceed towards Chicago, they gradually give us our descent so that we are clear from other traffic. They are showing the other aircraft on their radar at the same time. At the present time, we're descending 1,000 feet a minute to 20,000 feet. Just 3 or 4 minutes ago, they cleared us to descend to 20,000. As we proceed towards Chicago, they will give us other descent clearances, possibly traffic requiring it. They may make us hold someplace. We generally hold at intersections over the lake or at the Northbrook Omni, which is a radio station. That's quite a common place to hold. Occasionally, they will require us to adjust our airspeed so that we fit in with the traffic that is operating in the area at the time.
Okay, United 7235 is cleared to the Northbrook VOR. From our present position direct to Pullman, Victor 84 maintains flight level 250.
United 7235, roger.
We're assigned Victor 84, a Federal Airway, to O'Hare Field.
United 7235. 7235, roger. VFR Tabby's at 1 o'clock, 6 miles northwestbound. We'll pass clear. Thank you.
Flights like 7235 are fully protected today. But let's go back some years when the sky was first discovered by young men flying mainly for thrills. Captain Eddie Rickenbacker's only aids for flying properly were raw courage, daring, and the human intelligence. The fabulous gyro horizons and aviation radios were still unheard of, and the saying, flying by the seat of your pants, was not yet cliché. Captain Rickenbacker was one of the most decorated flyers in World War I. Within 10 years, another young aviator was anxious to fly the treacherous Atlantic alone. Charles Lindbergh equipped the Spirit of St. Louis the best he could. But not even the best included blind flying instruments. So, when the cloud sank over him, the Lone Eagle hedge-hopped over the waves. Then, 2 years later, an Army flyer named Jimmy Doolittle was the first man to fly and to land an airplane solely by the use of instruments. A World War II naval flight instructor, Fred Lee, wrote a military manual that became the basis for modern instrument flying. The instruments assure the pilot he is not flying dangerously, in blinding fog or clouds. He can maintain his proper airspeed and fly the altitude assigned by the controller, vital to the prevention of a midair or terrain collision. Planes even have radar hunting for bad weather. The gyro horizon tells the pilot he's climbing, descending, flying straight and level, or turning, as we're doing. The pilot can select any one of the Victor airways with his Omni radio. Every airway is an Omni radio beacon. The Omni station is the backbone of the Federal Airways system. Thousands across the country send out the priceless beams, the connecting radio highways on every point of the compass.
Solar Service Alpha information. O'Hare weather height thin scattered visibility.
Each controlled flight follows the beam assigned to it. Ours is Victor 84 to O'Hare Field. The center's controllers are supervised by crew chiefs. One of them is Edward Bourrier, a former military pilot.
Well, the airway system is a system of sky highways and superhighways that are laid out across the nation to provide routes for civil aviation and military aviation to get from place to place. The center generally is nothing more or less than a large building that contains a group of sectors, as we call them. Sectors are nothing more or less than taking the area and cutting it into pieces of pie, so to speak, geographical areas that are within the capability of a control team providing safe flight for everybody using the system. The controller is responsible for the safe, expeditious flow of traffic. His first responsibility, of course, is to provide always air safety. And then his second responsibility is to provide for the expeditious movement of this air traffic. At all times, he has a moral responsibility for providing for the safety of everybody who flies, be it the commercial pilot or be it the little flying farmer who's out there trying to fly for himself. And if he runs into trouble, he always has the Federal Aviation Agency's traffic controllers to help him out of perilous situations.
A close tab is kept on every airplane under control of the center. A flight script is made up for every airplane in advance of the flight and kept on racks with the controller. The strips serve as flight biographies for each blip on the controller's screen. They convey detailed information, identification, speed, route, destination, and the flight time. Air traffic control at Aurora is connected with its sister control centers and flight service stations by teletype and telephone. The heart of the communications area is the downstairs section. There is sufficient telephone equipment at the Aurora Center to serve a community of 20,000. Recorders in service around the clock monitor all the conversations between controllers and pilots. These recordings are kept on record in case of an investigation.
And at 7235 VFR traffic at 11 o'clock, 3 miles northbound, slow moving.
Negative. Keep us advised.
Radar surveillance of our plane must not be broken, especially when our flight is handed over from the high altitude to the low altitude controller. United 7235 is beginning to cross over Lake Michigan on Victor Airway 84. The jet will diminish its speed as it descends into the busier and lower altitudes.
United 7235 is now clear to descend and maintain flight level 180.
7235, flight level 80, or just 5 Pullman.
United 7235, roger. It's a traffic over Pullman, descending into O'Hare is out of 17,000.
Have him in sight. Put us out of flight level 200.
United 7235, roger. United 7235.
Contact Chicago radar, 127.1 now. Roger.
As directed by Aurora, the radio for voice communication is changed to the frequency of the low altitude controller, handling traffic over southern Lake Michigan. At Aurora, there is no interruption in control as the handoff is made from one radar display to another.
United 7235, here's VFR traffic, 12 o'clock, 10 miles northwest bound.
United 7235, Chicago, what is your indicated airspeed at the present time? 350 for United 7235, and the true airspeed is 498. United 7235, thank you.
United 7235, VFR traffic, 11 o'clock, 4 miles, westbound, slow.
We have it.
The instruments will show our flight crew when we cross several checkpoints over Lake Michigan. In the event of heavy traffic or bad weather, special radio facilities are set aside near the airport where planes can hold until cleared for landing. The planes fly a racetrack pattern around the radio beacons.
We're cleared to hold at the Northbrook radio station, the VOR, as we call it, at 7,000 feet. We'll proceed through the radio station, then reverse our course with a right turn, 30-degree bank to the right, proceeding back the direction we came from on an east heading. We will fly this for 1 minute, then make another right turn to a west heading, proceeding back to
United
the VOR.
7235 is leaving 9,000.
We normally make these turns at a 30-degree bank.
7235 United.
At our 7,000-foot altitude, our holding speed is 190 knots.
In addition to operating for the airlines and military, the FAA control centers also serve general or private aviation. 1 out of every 4 flights is in this category.
Hello, is this Joliet Flight Service?
Joliet Flight Service, that's Megan.
This is Dr. Harold over to Wings Field, and I would like to file an IFR flight plan.
Go ahead, Doctor.
IFR flight plan, 2168 Papa, Piper Apache.
There are hundreds of thousands of non-airline pilots in the country, and Dan Harold reports a flight plan just like the one filed for our own flight.
Wings Field, direct Piatone, Victor 128, Weircook, Indianapolis. 1 hour and 14 minutes en route. Fuel on board 5 hours. Alternate midway.
The ceiling and visibility are not below minimum, but Dan Harold of suburban Markham wants the en route protection the Federal Aviation Agency will give him all the way to Indianapolis. His plane will be radar tracked by the controller, and radio contact will be maintained, in the same way as if Harold were flying a 100-passenger airliner. General aviation constantly is increasing, all the time. Last year, more than 54,000 new student pilots were certified by the FAA. In contrast, 3,300 airline pilot certificates were issued. One of General Aviation's leading spokesmen is the Vice President of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association and editor of its magazine, Max Carrot.
The traffic control system has got to be modified, I believe, and modernized so that it is able to take care of the individual owner, the general aviation pilot, who flies by himself, because the greatest increase in instrument flying of all segments of aviation is going to be general aviation, and in a not too distant future. The system itself has got to be redesigned or modified to accommodate these people.
The fear of encroachment into their freedom of flying continues to be voiced by private pilots. But this is the reply of the FAA's David Thomas.
We're not taking away rights from general aviation. Busy traffic conditions, surface or the air, must be regularized. There must be some rules. And where the conditions are that cannot operate and see and be seen, there must be some control. But there's a tremendous amount of free airspace left in the United States, and there will always be a lot of free airspace for the private flyer, which will not be under any control other than the rules of the road and his own eyesight.
The control center at Aurora now is about to hand off our flight to Chicago Approach Control at O'Hare.
United 7235, contact Chicago Approach Control on 119.0 now.
119.0 now, changing over.
And 7235, roger, refer of traffic.
The 7-story control tower at O'Hare Field is the busiest in the world. A darkened room on the first floor contains the same electronic eyes of radar as at Aurora. Every airplane in the busy area is being carefully tracked. More than 150 instrument landings and takeoffs can be made in 1 hour at O'Hare. These require a clear and decisive communication between pilot and controller. Keeping the many planes in the approach area separated requires precise coordination.
United 7235, Chicago Approach Control. Radar contact, squawk code 04. Turn right heading 270. Vector runway 14 right, ILS final approach course, altimeter 3016. Over.
270 on the heading, 14 right, and 16 on the altimeter now.
Better put on the anti-ice.
All right. Towels are on. Would you like the wings on too?
No, I don't need those.
All right.
Eastern 926, traffic at 1 o'clock, 3 miles southeastbound, 1 o'clock, 6 miles northwestbound.
Okay, nobody at our altitude, no one.
United 7235, traffic 2 o'clock, 2 miles southwestbound, numerous targets in the vicinity of Northbrook VOR. Additional 11 o'clock, 3 miles northbound. Slow to 160 now if you're able. Descend to 3,500, over.
The scope is crowded, not only with commercial flights, but also with many low-altitude private flights.
I have now turned on our crosshairs, which, when intersected the dot here so that we are on the flight slope that will take us through the end of the runway.
As an electronic beam guides the pilot to the runway, precision radar also tracks the plane on the glide slope, where it can be carefully tracked and guided to a safe landing. The glide slope shows the descent of the aircraft to the runway.
United 7235 over the outer marker. Call the tower 118.1. You're on course and on glide path.
Should be 118, clear for takeoff. United 7235 O'Hare Tower, clear to land. Northwest 718, tax position 32 left and hold.
Yes, we have.
What?
A little bit of a crosswind. 12 knots.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
The wind is not down the runway. That's why I like everything.
On glide slope. 115 knots. Pardon?
O'Hare Tower, 222 Baker, runway 9 for takeoff.
Final descent is complete, except the anti-ice is coming off.
Thank you. We're rolling. VFR to Grand Rapids.
There's 1100 MSL, 114 knots. 1000 MSL, 115 knots, and 500 down.
What is it?
7235. There's 900 MSL.
7235. Departure frequency for whom?
Right at 7235, clear to land. Clear to land. 800 MSL.
118 knots, 500 down.
River Good Picker taking off. 6991, contact departure 125.4, over.
Oil okay. 115, 700, 500 on the sink. 110, 105.
In a moment, a look at the progress and future of air safety. At any busy hour in the nation's airspace, there may be as many as 70,000 people flying. Recently, the Federal Aviation Agency reduced the ceiling and landing restrictions on airliners to the lowest in aviation history. The new requirements will permit the airlines to land planes with only a 100-foot ceiling and a quarter-mile visibility. Only 5 airports in the world presently have the necessary equipment for these minimums. O'Hare will be equipped for them next year. The FAA believes that all-weather flights made even when the ceiling is zero and the visibility is zero, will be possible within 10 years. With the continuing advances in jet speed, the question is triggered in the public's mind, aren't the chances for mid-air collisions increasing? In 1956, 2 airliners collided over the Grand Canyon, taking the lives of all aboard. NBC's Peter Hackus in Washington asked David Thomas, Associate Administrator of the FAA, if there isn't a great danger of the same thing happening again.
Well, of course, that was the first one that attracted a great deal of public attention. That was between 2 aircraft which were off airways and not in a controlled airspace. And if it was the fault of the air traffic control system, it was because there was no control provided. We have done a great deal since then. We've spent about $1 billion in ground equipment. We've tripled the number of controllers. We've installed a complete radar network, communications network, so flying is nothing like it was back in 1956 when that happened.
Mr. Thomas, what major breakthroughs or major improvements can we expect to find in air safety in the next few years?
Well, there are quite a few that we can expect. One is we're on the verge now of a breakthrough of airplanes automatically reporting their altitude, which is done now by voice, by them continuously reporting their identity, and it's showing up on a radar scope, which now a controller must follow around with a plastic strip called a strip bolt. We're getting better landing equipment. We're getting better weather information. And the airframe in the power plant is much, much better. The jet power plant is one of the most reliable we've ever had.